Welcome to the Playing with Power podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things CEDH, EDH, and Magic the Gathering. I'm your host, Cal.
And I am your host, Alex. And today, we're going to be talking about all things Midrange. We'll be taking a deep dive on why Midrange is one of our favorite archetypes and how it manages to stay relevant in CEDH.
Before we go any farther, I wanted to talk quickly about our sponsors. They are TCG Player, Dragon Shield, and Patreon. If you are looking to get cards and you're not going to your local game store, give TCG Player a try for the best prices on the internet. When you receive them, make sure to protect them with Dragon Shield accessories, just like Playing with Power does with our own personal collections. You know, those Imperial Seals and Dual Lands, we got to take care of them, right?
Yeah.
After that, take all those cards for a spin during our webcam leagues, tournaments, and Patreon days over on our Patreon in our Discord. You get all kinds of benefits for your direct support. Finally, our merchandise store is back. We didn't like the quality of our last store, so we did some research and found a great new provider. Merchandise is better, in our opinion, and we're adding new designs all the time. Check out the podcast description for links to everything mentioned today.
Today's Patreon shout-out is Ryan Green. Super excited to have you, bud.
Thanks, Ryan.
What's up? Thank you for your support, buddy.
Thanks for supporting us.
Ryan Green, shout out.
So, as Hired mentioned up top, today we're talking about mid-range in competitive EDH. What is mid-range? What are mid-range decks trying to do? Why are mid-range decks relevant? And especially right now, why are mid-range decks kind of seeming to creep back up over ad nauseam in some tournament results, in the pods you're playing from time to time? But first, I just wanted to explain the concept of mid-range a little bit. What is mid-range as an archetypal concept in Magic the Gathering? Everything in a mid-range deck is focused on efficiency. Mid-range pilots want to deploy effective resources, overwhelm opponents with effective threats. If you're familiar with formats, competitive formats beyond Commander, the premium example is always Jund in Modern, where you're playing cards like Tarmogoyf, which is often a 2 CMC 5/6, and all those kind of things. Inside of CEDH, a lot of mid-range decks often seek to deploy a single threat and protect it, getting value off of it. And many mid-range decks especially seek to use their commander as a strong engine. Some of the most popular commanders you'll see out there for mid-range decks include Thrasios, since, just pay 4 mana into him, you get cards. Tymna obviously turns all your dudes attacking people into cards. Crom, which turns your opponent's actions into cards while also being able to beat them up with a big flyer. And then Tevesh, the king of eating up other mid-range decks, can create blockers for days and also turn them into cards.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Really, a lot of the commanders that we see in mid-range decks and mid-range strategies, we're getting so much value, right? And one of the things that I really like about mid-range is the adaptability of the decks. So seeing cards, so Dranith Magistrate is a staple in any mid-range deck that can play white. But you can easily slot that out if you're just noticing that you need a little bit more speed, because maybe we're in a weird place where this really fast meta is just outpacing you and you can't keep up, and you don't really have time for a Dranith. You need a turn one, land rock into another value engine that's going to draw you cards. And I love that about mid-range. To me, that's one of the biggest things. And Thrasios, Tymna, Crom, Tevesh all kind of bring this draw engine strategy online really quickly. And I really like that. I really like that a lot.
Yeah, for sure. When we were putting together the podcast, we decided, before we talked about more generalized options, we both wanted to talk about a mid-range deck that we were both quite familiar with, wanted to talk through pros and cons, what meta the deck does well in. And as Hire was putting together the show notes, he put down Rashmi for me. But Alex, I'm kind of interested first, before I dig into my favorite deck, why you think that why you would label Rashmi as a mid-range deck rather than, say, a control deck.
Yeah, when I think of mid-range, I think of how fast can your deck go. If you were able to draw, let's say, 15 cards, right? Could you assemble a win? And when I think of Rashmi, I think of turn 1, land, Mana Crypt, Rhystic Study. Turn 2, like land, Rashmi, and now it is so hard to stop you. Like it is so like once your value engines get on board, it's just it's so rough to try and stop you because everything you're just countering everything, and like yes, it is controlless, but I think when I think of control, I don't think of like late game control. I think of the mid range. I think that mid game is where you really find your stride and you like set up that win all of those value engines just time and time again, and you're just doing the things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I'll talk about Rashmi a little bit. I've been playing Rashmi in CEDH since pretty much 2017, ever since she was printed. Coming up on 5 years now. Holy cow!
Wow.
And, like Alex just said, that deck really is all about jamming value engines and then doing your best to make do with them. Of course, the preeminent value engine being Rashmi, which turns every single spell you cast, not every single spell, but the first spell you cast every turn into a cantrip. So your Rhystic Study can cantrip. Your delay on an opponent's spell cantrips. So on and so forth. Your Mana Rock you cast on your current cantrips. That's kind of crazy. So that's definitely like one of the biggest pros for the deck is that if you can get Rashmi out onto the battlefield and protect Rashmi from getting removed, she is easily one of the best value engines that is out there on a creature. Of course, with Rashmi, Rashmi does not have partner. She is a Simic commander that does not have partner and does not win the game on her own. That's definitely one of the biggest cons about the deck, and a little bit different than the deck that you're about to talk about here in a few minutes. But but one of the biggest cons, you can dig cards all you want. You can draw lots of cards, but you are a Simic deck. You're really good at tutoring creatures if you want to, which the deck doesn't really want to. You're okay at tutoring up artifacts, which is great because you're an ISO Rev deck. So if you can tutor up your Isochron Scepter, you're in good shape. Some newer builds of Rashmi are getting away to some other cooler win cons, and I can't wait to explore that. But it definitely struggles to win the game. There is some, I believe, a game on our channel where with Rhystic and Mystic out, through another person trying to win the game, I untapped with like 25 cards in my hand and just had to discard to hand size. And that's kind of emblematic of the big con of Rashmi as a deck. But it was a lot of fun in the last 9 months playing Rashmi a bit when right around the time when, Ad-Nauseam decks were really good, and then suddenly people said, wait a second, Stacks decks can be really good against Ad-Nauseam decks. And more and more people started playing Stacks. Now it's kind of almost the perfect meta to play Rashmi into, because all these people just wanted to, on turn 1, play their Mana Crypt, play their white X dual land, and cast Rule of Law. And I said, awesome, I'm only casting 1 spell a turn anyways, let's go. But now, as we move a little bit more, I think, toward a mid-range meta, Rashmi has been a little bit less and less good in those kind of scenarios, because while she can compete on the value engine side, she can't compete with people still casting Ad Nauseam. So
yeah. it's so true. When I think of Rashmi, like I've seen you play it, and every time I've seen you play it, I just see like very similar lines of play. It's like, oh, not only do I have Rashmi, like, which is a really good draw engine, I also happen to have this other thing that wait, is a Wave Break Hippo Camp?
Wave Break Hippo Camp. The first spell you cast on an opponent's turn, you draw a card. It's kind of just like a second Rashmi, yeah.
Yeah. So I've seen you have like games where you had like that, Rhystic, and Rashmi, and it's like it felt like every time someone did something, you just drew 3 cards. Like I just felt like
exactly. It's like you do something impactful, okay, I delay it, I draw 3 cards. Go ahead. Yeah,
thanks.
Exactly.
Thanks for that. Here's my fun. It's like it's so silly. It's like in those situations you cast a Brainstorm and you draw 5 cards. Like that's bananas.
Exactly.
So yeah. So I don't know. I can see why, like, especially in Simic control decks, how it could be hard to assemble when drawing 25 cards and not being able to get there. But you just discard like your best 7, which are just essentially 7 draw spells for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Not the worst.
Here are my four counter spells, and then I'll opt on the next guy's end step. Why not?
Yeah, I'll opt. I'll just like it's just so good. It's so good.
I'll draw 2, scry 1, draw another one. Go ahead, opponent.
Go ahead, opponent. My ancestral recall.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. When I think of like mid-range, like Simic mid-range, I think honestly, I think about Rashmi a lot. I think when you are looking at decks that are Simic, that are trying to do similar things, not that many decks do what yours does. Like I built like Kinnan, like mid-range Kinnan.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
I'm not really drawing a lot of cards. I'm doing a lot of activation stuff.
Yep.
And when I think about like Thrasios, like I also think of like maybe Thrasios Kydel, maybe but there honestly, I can't. Can you think of another Simic?
No, those
commander?
those two are it, and I think that's definitely like the only thing holding the Rashmi deck afloat is the fact that it's just such a free value engine in the command zone, where I think so much of the power of both Thrasios and Kinnan, who are the only 2 Simic, combinations often that you're gonna see out there, is just because you breathe on them and they just automatically win the game for you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like they just, it's like, it's so silly. Like the only other commanders I'm diving in. What other commanders could there be?
CEDH database.
Okay. So like you have Edric, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Edric. Edric is a good mid-range Simic commander.
Yeah. For sure.
Tatiova. See, I don't think Tatiova is mid-range. I think Tatiova is like is a very slow linear deck that's like trying to do something very consistent, but for a very long time. I feel like
trying to play my lands, draw some cards.
Yeah, I'm gonna play some land, draw some cards.
How nice.
How very nice. There was a conversation we had a long time ago about like the different archetypes, right? So there's like stacks, and there's like turbo, right? And there's this mid-range thing, and I think the term that they used was proactive.
Yeah, I think instead of combo, people very often say proactive. Yeah,
proactive, and then like these like different terminologies to basically describe like how fast you want to play, and if you're comboing out. And like Tatiova sits in this like really long linear area versus like Rashmi, which is like can be kind of explosive with just pure card advantage and drowning people in card advantage, versus say Prime Speaker Vanifar, which just wants you. There's no mid range to this. It's just like let's cast and activate.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So, anyways, that was one of the things I was really thinking about when I was thinking about the cards we were going to review today.
Yeah.
So Rashmi is your favorite, correct?
Yeah.
5 years?
Give or take. It was like October 2017, I think, was when Kaladesh came out.
Yeah, this is like the 5-year anniversary for you, bud.
Yeah, coming up. Kind of crazy, right?
Yeah, man.
me and my boo.
Me and my boo, baby. Dude, it's so good. I'll never forget in Vegas when we played the late night games, and I was like, you could just win, and then you're like, nah.
It was in retrospect. So for context, we're on our second night in Vegas at GP Vegas. We are out late, pretty late, and then after we've been out late, for me, the sleepiest man alive, as Alex said before we started recording, the sleepiest man he's ever met. This is probably like, we show up at the Airbnb of Rebel Sun and Mikey and Comedian, and we say, and Michael Levine, we say, yeah, we're going to play some CEDH. It's like 1 a.m. Vegas time.
Yeah.
4 a.m. EST, where I'm from. And we sit down to play a game of Magic. I pull out Rashmi. Turn 1 win in hand. Literally, Isochron Scepter, Dramatic Reversal, Simic Signet, Mana Crypt, lands, draw spell, like X draw spell, turn 1 win. And I'm so tired. I'm just like, I draw my card. I'm like, do. Wow, this can cast Rashmi on turn 1.
I'm just like looking at it, I'm like, what? And you have to like remember, like we're playing in a situation where like everybody can kind of see everyone's hands, like it's really friendly, like
we're just
game,
hanging
right?
Out. Yeah.
And like I'm like, dude, wait, stop! Did you just pass the turn? Are you serious? Like you had the wind like ready to go, and then like just like other people come over like what are you doing? Like I'm tired. That's what I'm tired. Okay, I'm gonna go to sleep after this.
The game promptly ended very fast after I think Mikey just stomped us so hard with Armix Crom, and then I went over to lay down on the couch and was asleep within like 45 seconds. So
yes, he was a tired man, tired man. So okay, all right. So your favorite is Rashmi. My favorite, is Kenrith Evolution. Now, I say this with a little bit of like, Kenrith is just the deck that I've been like really crafting for like the longest. And like when I think of Midrange, this was the deck for me. When history lesson time. So a couple of years ago, like right before the pandemic, there was like Kenrith was on Flash Hulk. Flash got banned. No, Flash was illegal when we brewed Kenrith Evolution. And there was like this really strong like push to like play mid-range, because like a lot of people were kind of frozen by the threat of Flash. So, you know, you could win turn 1, like that was possible. Like you just needed Flash Hulk in hand and like a rock and in 2 mana, whatever 2 mana you could find, and you could win. But there was no like, everyone was worried about it, so everyone always had mana open up for interaction. And mid-range just like slid right in there. It was like, oh, okay, no one's doing anything. We can just put these value engines on board and keep drawing cards. And so I was like, oh, that's cool. And I played against a guy, and he was playing this Thrasios Bruce WinCon tribal deck. And I was like, what is happening? He had every WinCon you could have in a deck. Like he had Seedborn Muse in there. He had like Bomberman combos. For those of you who know, that's Auriok Salvagers and Lion's Eye Diamond, like goes infinite, and with Thrasios that happens to be great. He just literally ran every sort of like every sort of WinCon. Like at that time, I think he was on Temur Sabertooth, Dockside Loops, Temur Sabertooth, or not Temur, Baron Master Wizard, Dockside Loops. Like literally every sort of like combo you could run, and I thought that was like really interesting. I was like, that's really like that would be really good in a 5-color thing. And the guy's name, by the way, at the time, that's Alton. And so I was like, oh, that's really cool. Let's make a 5-color version of this. At first it was Golos. Golos. Classic.
I've heard that card is really good.
Yeah, so good, man. They should ban that card. And then I was like, wow, activating Golos not on your turn isn't that great. So I was like, well, what about Kenrith? Let's try Kenrith. And I put like the first evolution Kenrith list out. And I worked with Alton pretty closely. And then Comedian joined the conversation, and he was like, dude, like, and he took the Thrasios Bruce and made Dawnwaker. And there's another guy named Okami who made Thrasios Vial Smasher Evolution, which doesn't get as much doesn't get seen quite as much, but it's so good. And like the 4 of us, like we really started making like this evolution like project. That's, I guess, that's actually the name of the whole thing, is the Evolution Project by Alton. And we started making like these decks and really trying to develop them. And for me, Kenrith Evolution was just like, that was it. And it's gone through so many like cards. Like there's Razaketh was in there, Sire of Insanity has been in there, like just like all these random cards. And for me, it was never about making infinite mana. It was just making some mana and being able to do something with that, and learning where to really go. And I found this like really cool, let's make every card really that synergizes with each other, fine lines that work well. things that you could only do with Kenrith. Like there's a line in Kenrith that uses. There was a person I play against. I've told the story a few times. There's a person I used to play against a lot who plays a lot of cards that get you. Like, oh, my Thassa Oracle, and he'll be like, and Angel's Grace, like, mother,
stifled,
like,
yeah, exactly.
stifled. All right, you're just like, son of a.
Who plays that card?
Yeah,
oh.
right. Gosh, who does this, right? And it was just like so brutal, like those cards. And I remember one time, he did that. He did an Angel's Grace during I had a Final Fortune resolved, and on the second turn I lost because of that. And I was like, you know what? I need to find a way through this. And I found a line. So if you're ever in this situation and you happen to be on Kenrith for whatever reason, I don't know why.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Okay. You cast an Angel's Grace on my Final Fortune turn. Okay. All right.
I pass.
Right. Like son of a, right. Okay. The response. And this is like, you're going for the win. Like you're going, like you have infinite mana. You're trying to go for the win. Not in response. After you do that, what I can do is I can cast Praetors. No, I can cast Noxious Revival. I can Noxious your Angel's Grace back on top of your library. Then I cast Praetor's Grasp, targeting you, stealing your Angel's Grace. I cast the Angel's Grace. From there, because Eternal Witness is in the deck, you can cast Eternal Witness, get back the Final Fortune, recast Final Fortune. Yeah. And this allows you to take this allows you to, by the way, to take infinite turns. Because you can keep Noxious Revivaling.
You can just keep doing it.
Yeah, forever.
Yeah, that's great.
And when I found lines like that, it was just like, oh man, this is amazing. I love being able to transition with a commander, and having these really complicated, weird lines like that was just so like mind blowing to me. And
this
like,
made you say, "Dang, I love mid-range decks."
Mid-range, let's go! like being able to do that, like that to me is what mid-range is all about.
Yeah, I love that.
Hey Cal.
Yeah.
Let's take an ad break, bro.
You know, that's a great point, Alex. Before we hop into the rest of it, we are going to take a quick ad break, get a word in from our sponsor, and then we'll be right back. Looking to pick up some fun CEDH merch that also supports our channel? Check out our store. We have a variety of clothing designs and have more to come soon, like Playing with Power deck sleeves. If you want to play some Magic with us IRL, you're in luck. Members of Playing with Power will be attending both Marchesa, where we'll be playing in the CEDH main event, and Star City Games Indianapolis, where we'll be recording games for the channel all weekend. We can't wait to see ya. And welcome back to the Playing with Power podcast with Cal and Alex from Playing with Power. We've been talking about mid-range, and we're going to get right back into it. We just talked about our two of our favorite mid-range decks, and now we're going to talk a little more broadly about previously strong mid-range decks and some of the mid-rangey decks that are kind of taking on the world today. Alex, take us away.
Yeah, man, previously strong mid-range decks that I will and still always like. Shout out to Medium Green or CST Thrasios, which I feel is more of like a combo deck. But the idea of running Seedborn Muse is just so silly in in any Thrasios deck. If you just land it, people don't realize. It's like saying like you're dead, but you don't know it yet. You know that phrase? Like that's how I feel, right? Like oh man, we're dead, guys. Like this, like they haven't won yet, but they untap. They've gotten 3.
They've drawn so many cards. They've had Seedborn Muse this whole time.
It's so brutal. It's so brutal. I played games where like Seedborn Muse, which I would have one spell. It'd be a Swords to Plowshare, and I didn't care. It could be a Razaketh and a Seedborn Muse, and I'd be like really questioning if I should kill a Razaketh. Like maybe I should really kill a Seedborn Muse. I don't know. Like if I kill one of these, the other person's gonna win. That's how I always feel.
I can't kill their dirtily value creature. What is that going to do for me?
What's going to happen here? The worst is when you have a Seedborn Muse and someone kills your Thrasios, and you're like,
"Oh, for sure, this is useless now.
This is useless. I don't have 3 cards in hand."
But
I needed Thrasios.
Medium Green. It was like a big deck. a year ago, a year and a half ago, what do you think changed?
Red got way better.
Yeah, Theros Beyond Death came out.
Yeah, Dockside got printed. I don't know.
Yeah.
The really huge shift that we saw is speed, right? So like when you think about mid-range, and this is really good for like a general conversation. So when you're thinking about mid-range stacks and like Adnos or Turbo, they always run in like this cycle where like Adnos will get a bunch of toys and go really, really fast, and everyone will get kind of like burn out on Adnos and like, oh, you're just gonna cast Adnos. And the response to that is stacks. Like stacks like finds a way to like, okay, let's slam down these turn one rule of laws. Let's get these deafening silences out there. Let's do a root maze, right? These cards stop all types of Adnos from doing the Adnos things, which is great for everything. But then people get so tired of games lasting 3.5, 4 hours. Like, oh my gosh, like, give me a break here. That there's a shift to these mid-range decks, which are a little stacksy, but also have some storm in them. And this like confluence shifts usually back into the Adnos world, because it's like, oh, you get a taste of the speed again. And you're like, oh, maybe I should try making it a faster deck. And so when you're looking at having like really, really strong stacks decks and the response that you might get, you have decks like medium green, which love people not casting spells. Like, oh, I can just untap with Seedborn and keep untapping, and everyone's casting one spell per turn, and I can defend the Seedborn. I'm just going to have all these lands by the time I untap, and I can just grind my way through it. And that's like really, I think that's why it was so good. And then red got better because, right? So like you have like this kind of like battle between, I would say green. I think green and red really hold a place because blue and black tend to hold their own like pretty like easily.
They're always doing their thing. Yeah.
Dimir's always doing their things. But I think red and green in terms of like payoff, because white right now has a lot of silence effects, and that's really, really good.
That's good.
But
silence effects, rule of law effects, et cetera. Yep.
Yeah. And so, but I think red and green like were like, for a while green just had all these toys and red didn't. Red had for a while it was just like Dockside and maybe in Breach. Those were the only two really big cards. And then SWAT got printed, and I was like, huh. And then everyone started doing like Wheel of Fortune, Wheel of Misfortune, and then we started seeing stronger and stronger cards. Now we have Ragavan. Like it's just like red got all of these good stuff, and it just outpaced what medium green was trying to do.
Would you say almost as a default at this point in time, green in the way that its colors work and the way that its colors affect CEDH, you know, what it does that we're trying to do in CEDH was just like very often creature tutors, blow up each other's artifacts and enchantments, you know, that kind of stuff. And then what we've gotten from red over the last 2 years, you know, deflecting SWAT, Dockside, you know, so on and so forth. A lot of stuff from Commander Legends too. Would you say it's almost like in a world in CEDH where green is better, mid-range is better, and then in a world where the red of the last 3 years is now better, just turbo, kind of way stronger?
Yeah. I think red has accelerants that green does not. Like green can do some fast stuff. I always think when I think of like fast, I think of like Marwyn. I mean that's kind of sacrilegious because I'm like a huge Savala player, but right. But like a turn one Marwyn is very easy, and you get just benefits from doing that. Turn one Savalas can be really tough because of the two green, and so like it's hard to do fast stuff with green. It just is. But you can do, and when I say fast, I'm literally meaning turn 3. And for some of our listeners, that might be like wicked fast, but in CDH, like it's not anymore. It used to be, it's just not anymore. And so I think red, like you could do turn 1, like land, pitch, I don't know, pitch your, red's the Simian Spirit Guide? There we go. I was like having a hard time thinking of that. Right?
Yeah, Simian Spirit Guide,
right.
Yeah.
Red, pitch SSG, cast Rite of Flame, Wheel of Fortune. And this is only using red mana, like all of this. Pitch everyone. Then you can start laying out the other rocks that you draw, and it's just so fast. It's like, oh my gosh, this is so obnoxious. One reason why I didn't like Hull Breacher was because you like, oh my god. Listen, Hull Breacher, people will talk about, oh, you shouldn't ban Hold. Listen, yes, you should ban Hold Breacher. Hold Breacher, turn 1, if you had 4 mana, you could strip everyone's hand. Like, it was like land, crypt, Lotus Petal, cast Winds of Change, respond with Hold Breacher. Like, how gross. Like, excuse me, rude.
Yeah, exactly.
And I saw that happened to me, and that's why it's so fresh. Shout out to Ashani, Jamaican time.
That's why I want it banned.
Yeah.
But almost in a little bit of this context too, like around Commander Legends 2, right? When a lot of really good red stuff was printed. I would almost go so far as to say that one of the biggest things that has brought down green in the realm of, being a mid-range color in the medium green stuff is, like, I think the singular printing of Jeweled Lotus put the stocks of mana dorks, like, into the basement in comparison to what they were before. Because, like, there's so many times where a lot of these decks who cared about their commanders were happy to play green because you can go rock plus dork, have all this mana, boom, turn 2 commander, no problem. That's awesome. And now you don't need those dorks anymore because you can hard mulligan for your Jeweled Lotus and smash your 3 CMC 2-color commander with no problem or whatever.
Yeah.
Cast Crom on turn 1.
Yeah,
with
Crom,
no problem.
turn 1 Croms, bro. That's like the worst. Yeah, I think mana dorks in general are not as good as they were at some point in time. And even Collector Oof is like really good, but in these decks that normally run like a lot of dorks, they're still waiting. It's hard to get a turn 1 Collector Oof because you're not really playing a lot of rocks to get them out to like accelerate. You need
you're playing Collector Oof.
Because you're playing Collector Oof, right? Yeah. So it's just so even the hate pieces, like the only card in my mind that has been just that's a beast is Root Maze. Like turn 1 Root Maze stops everybody. Like Root Maze don't care about your feelings. Like
for sure.
Yeah.
So obviously, medium green and its ilk of related kind of green, cast your Thrasios and your Seaborn Muse kind of stuff. Obviously, those aren't the mid-range of today, but what is the mid-range of today? Because you said earlier, and a lot of people are saying now that, mid-range is kind of coming back. Turbo and Stacks are both kind of being tamped down a little bit as we go back to Value Town. And what are some mid-range decks that are strong right now?
I think like the first one that comes to my head is Krark-Ashima, right? So if you're unfamiliar with Krark and its oh so nefarious partner Sakashima, 1,000 faces, it's just this coin flippy madness, and it has this ability to not only disrupt your game plans, but its own game plans. Because, I love it when I have to spend 4 mana to cast Gamble successfully.
Yep.
How's your experience been with Krark?
Krark-Ashima, I have had the pleasure of playing against it quite a bit since I have become a frequent on streams, of which Ken of Stacked EDH is also a frequent of. So I have played my fair share of games against that fine man who is, pretty much the prophet and disciple, and as far as I'm aware, best pilot of the deck out there. I mean, of that I'm aware of. That's probably not necessarily true, but he's definitely the most prolifically known Krark-Ashima pilot out there right now.
Ken does get his reps in.
Yeah, he's very good. He knows what he's doing, and I think the deck it's really sneakily good because even if it can feel bad to look at this commander and be like, yeah, there are scenarios where I will have to pay 4 mana to successfully cast my Gamble, but even once there's 2 Krarks on the battlefield, which is the entire purpose of the deck, since Sakashima is the other commander, the math just works out to where, like, okay, I cast my Gamble and I got my mana back for it, and also I have it in my hand again. Like eventually the math just works out like to all of your spells having buyback 0 on them is pretty much what it is past a point. But it the biggest thing that it has to do is it deploys its value generating permanents like Krark and Sakashima as a copy of Krark. And then once it's played Krark, it needs its Harmonic Prodigy to double up on the Krark triggers, or it needs its Tavern Scoundrel to give it treasures whenever it wins its coin flips. And it has to keep those permanents around, or else it is not going to win. It definitely needs those things around. And then once someone else has exhausted their win con and has been stopped by 3 Spell Pierces that were cast off of 1 Spell Pierce card, tries to win from a safe position, which I think is really interesting, while still retaining the ability to storm off really quickly if it needs to.
Yeah, I've only transparency here. Transparency. Yeah. I've never sleeved up a Krark list because I've seen people's just unfortunate luck, and I'm one of those people who I would be so mad.
You would simply tilt off the planet.
Oh my God, the salt! I could turn a lake into an ocean. You know what I mean? Like that much salt would come out. I would just be like, oh, this is now the Dead Sea. That's how salty I am. Like it becomes its own stack space, and that could be really rough in times that you need it. But I've witnessed Krark. I've seen Krark Thrasios do really, really good. Shout out to Deke. His list is bananas. And so like the idea of using cards that are just free over and over and over. I've seen like Gut Shot kill people before. Like it's just so silly. It's a silly thing.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think Karkashima is a really good example of what a powerful mid-range commander can be that can go fast, but also like tends to lean a bit away from the win at breakneck speeds. Yeah. What do you think as another commander?
I think another really solid list, which much like lists of old, and happens to have a commander pair that you mentioned earlier, which is Comedian's Dawnwaker Thrasios. It plays 19 creatures, only 10 artifacts, a pile of great enchantments, a lot of lands. Heck, it plays Wargate. Because it used to be Blue Pod, and then over time it transitioned into being a deck that only cares about getting Zerta Dawnwaker onto the battlefield, which is a companion card, and yet we get to play it in the 99 here, which is sweet. And it makes all your abilities that aren't mana abilities cost 2 generic less to activate. So it makes grinding with Thrasios really easy. It makes your Grim Monolith and your Basalt Monolith make infinite colorless mana, and all that kind of stuff. Then everything else in the deck is just like value. Emil, which is, a win con, Ranger Captain EO, Seedborn Muse, yada yada yada. This almost to me feels like the modern evolution of medium green.
Yeah. It's so funny because medium green was made most popular by Braden, and Braden and Comedian had a podcast together called the CEDH podcast.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and CEDH cast. CEDH cast? He's gonna be mad at me that I mispronounce this.
You mispronounced the name of the godfather of CDH's podcast?
CEDH cast. Yeah. I have one of their play mats, to be fair. I was a big support. Anyways, so they worked a lot together, and when Dawnwaker came out, it was just really cool because Evolution is a little bit slower of a deck, but Dawnwaker Thrasios is really fast. It is definitely in that role of mid-range, but it's on the slimmer end. And Wargate is hot. I don't care what anyone says. I love the synergies. If you mentioned, right, like, oh, it can create infinite mana with Basalt Monolith and Zerda, but it can also create, like, this in the same token, because it's on Basalt Monolith, Kinnan is in the deck. So you can make that same infinite mana, you can then activate Thrasios and do all the things, right? I loved how many synergies there were with that. I thought that was really, really cool. And it just has so many ways to win, like to pull those wins out. And you'd be surprised with not having black in the deck, how many times you just don't care. You just draw the things you need. And when you have such a high card quality, it's kind of easy to see why it's so good. Cards like Wargate, so good.
Yeah, Wargate's awesome. So I in preparation, I did write down a few more mid-range decks that are pretty strong right now, but we're running out of time, and I'm not as familiar with the final three, so I want to get your quick thoughts on these three decks.
Sure.
To the best of your ability.
Okay.
Paco, hold on. Go.
Paco Haldan. So Paco Haldan is really, really good. I lost to it in the Mox Bowl finals. It is so strong. You like simply get a Paco, hit everyone in the face, get essentially card draw, cast Haldan.
Hit people with a huge thing, draw 4 cards.
Draw 4 cards, and then keep doing that, and it just wins games. You need, I think it's like 12 mana to do like the I win line. But you don't really care because at the end of the day, you have like a 25 Paco that's hitting everyone in the face and killing them. So you only have so many creatures.
Yeah, for sure. Polykraken. Familiar with the Polykraken lists at all?
Yeah, Polykraken's really, really cool. Cam from the Laboratory Maniacs. Really, 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 really good. They did. There was a situation where I had 2 Wandering Archaics, and he killed one of my. I copied it and I tried killing one of my own creatures to try and get my own Kraken out first. It was just it was bananas. But it's really good because Whole Breach Horror is just so stupid. Up magic card? It's like, oh my god, once it's on the battlefield, like you can't do anything about it. It's like, sorry, you lose, I win, thanks. Oh, you try to cast a spell, it goes back to your hand. You only have so many blue cards for that Force of Will.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so really good.
All right, Razakats.
I think Razakats is really good. I think of these 3 lists, I think Razakats is one of the most consistent because all you need to do is put Razaketh into the graveyard, reanimate it. It's a really, really simple line, and you can win the game very, very fast, and both your commanders are really cheap. So for 5 mana, you can have both your commanders out, and the next turn you can try doing the line, and you have enough creatures to win with Razaketh. Super, super strong. I think that it was a really well-built deck, and there's a lot of people that I see piloting. Most recently has been Scotty Scoots with 8 O's. Scotty with 8 O's. Really, really good pilot, but that deck shines brightly.
A last second edition TNT Rectorfit.
I don't even know TNT. Oh, like Thrasios Timno with
Thrasios Timno with pilot.
Academy Rector.
Okay. Yeah, Academy Rector and Arena Rector.
Oh, what are you trying to do with Arena Rector?
Arena Rector can go and get you Jace Wielder of Mysteries, or it can get you Liliana's Death Majesty to reanimate your Hulk in a pinch.
Oh, it's a Hulk deck. Oh,
it is a Hulk deck. Yeah, it does like weird Rector piles. Yeah.
Oh, I need to see more of this. This is really cool.
I can send you the list. It's a other Callahan list.
List. Okay.
Yep, it's Callahan of the Mind Sculptors list.
That's really, really cool. Wow. Awesome. Well, to the listeners, this is what I want to say to y'all. Our call to action tonight. What is your favorite mid-range list? What decks do you think should have been mentioned? And is mid-range the best archetype in the meta? I think so.
The best?
The best?
Wow. Well, thank you for listening, everyone. A big thanks to all of our sponsors. Once again, TCG Player, Dragon Shield, and viewers and listeners like you on Patreon. If you're watching this on YouTube, give us a comment, like this video, and subscribe if you're already not a subscriber. And if you're listening to us in your ears, like off your phone or something, which most of you are, Make sure to give us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast aggregator. You would be shocked how much that helps people find the podcast who are looking for CEDH information. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and other media socials. All the links are in the episode description below. And that wraps it up for this episode of the podcast. Tune in next time when we talk more about our favorite format and our favorite game, Magic the Gathering. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time.